Of course, one of the famous quotes, I believe it's actually from Dr. Seuss, is that
Mm,
if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live the rest of its life thinking it's stupid, or something along those lines. I've probably butchered it,
mm,
but this probably
mm,
applies very much to this dichotomy that you've identified here between the successful attributes, or the attributes of a successful founder, per this study,
mm,
and your previous work
mm,
with successful employees. And openness to experience, which is one of the
mm,
big five, obviously, for those who aren't too familiar
mm.
with it, I believe from your study plays a really big role here on the entrepreneurial side. So could you dig a bit deeper into what you found there?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I love Dr. Zeus, so I'm so glad you introduced him there. And yeah, I think so. These features, the features that are associated with entrepreneurship, um, in the first piece of work where we're distinguishing entrepreneurs to employees, we found, so we looked at this, Luke, at the facet level. So there's the big five, which is famously openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and sometimes called neuroticism,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes called emotional stability.
Mm-hmm.
They're the five factors, but within those, there's a much more subtle level of sub factors. So you can break those five into six subdomains or facets as they're known. And you get a much more high resolution version of personality. And that's what we used for this study. So within openness, for example, we found that the facet of adventurousness was, interestingly and not surprisingly, perhaps the most significant in distinguishing entrepreneurs from employees. The thing I found fascinating about this is too, I was reflecting on, the behavior of some of the most high profile and well known entrepreneurs like Richard Branson. And in Australia, the co founders of Canva, Melanie, um, who are into kite surfing, and many other entrepreneurs are into cave diving and climbing. And, these sort of, one of my colleagues is into um, racing, motor racing. And
Mm.
so I
Risk
think this
taking.
idea of adventurousness, um, yeah, exactly, yeah. And I watched this documentary of Shackleton, who I'm fascinated with. The um, Irish trans-Antarctic adventurer from a century ago,
Mm.
um, who led the famous adventure that went wrong, but he managed to incredibly save the lives of everybody in the crew. And it struck me that I think a lot of those types of personalities were the entrepreneurs of their day, those adventurers. And so, yeah, high amount of adventurousness. But what it means in a literal sense is also a preference for novelty over, so people who don't like doing the same thing. There's some people who actually thrive on routine and predictability, and you see this in tennis. So to be a great athlete in most fields, you need to be willing to put in the hours and practice, and put in um, and do things repetitively and continue to learn and improve and exercise that, whatever those muscles are. But in entrepreneurship, it's almost the opposite, where you sort of say, I'm not willing to do that thing again. I just want to do something different today. So, um, yeah, so that's one of the facets that's key. Another one is agreeableness, the facet of cooperation. Again, not surprising.
Mm-hmm.
Um, another facet within agreeableness, low modesty. So that could be seen as confidence, um, and also um, uh, employees, on the other hand, have much lower levels of activity.
Right.
They don't run on such a fast clock, and so on. So there's a variety of different features.